Okay, so we're now recording. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. And the reason we've set this webinar up is that because through conversation we've been having lately and even in the past, whether it's with clients, with colleagues, or even friends, people are going through some very difficult situations, whether it's to do with the workplace, whether it's to do with just generally having concerns and worry and anxiety about situations in life. And empathy is something that people want to understand more about. So what we decided to do is, based on that, it inspired us to create this webinar and bring our panel of experts to share their insights as well. So welcome to everyone. We have people who have been on other webinars, and we've also got new people who have joined us today, and we're very happy to see you here. So what are we going to be covering today? So we're going to talk a little bit more about what the company does, what our kind of core niche and service offerings are. We'll introduce the team. We'll talk about empathy as a topic. We'll also take the opportunity for you to reflect on some questions and some themes which perhaps you haven't thought about before, and it's a great opportunity for you to think about. We'll go through the three core elements of empathy, and then we get practical, then we get our hands dirty and we talk through two case studies. And this is where, if you have any insights, if you have any information, or you want to share your own experiences or questions, then please feel free to. At the end, if you've got any specific questions for our coaches, at the end, you will have an opportunity to ask questions as well. Can I please request that everyone goes on mute unless you are speaking or you're going to ask a question, to save background noise and distortion. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is Get Set Coach. So I'm going to hand over to Philippe for him to go through this in more detail.
Thank you, Monica, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So my name is Philippe Matheis. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Reach Outstanding. To give you some background of what I've done, I've been 27 years in the corporate level. I'm an ex-CEO. I'm an award-winning certified executive coach. I was board member of the ICF UAE chapter in 2019. And I'm credentialized at PCC level with the ICF. So just like people have different stages of their career and different needs based on that stage, we have created different brands with different offering to match those needs. However, all of the brands, so as you can see, the Get Set Coach, Reach Outstanding Learning, and Reach Outstanding Executive share the same ethos and the same values and the mother brand, which is Reach Outstanding. And today's webinar we're going to host is hosted by Get Set Coach. And the Get Set Coach was created to address the need of specifically student, first jobbers, new managers, and is made of executive coach and life coach, as I've mentioned earlier. So as I said, the whole reason behind it, as you can see on the arrows, as the needs change, as the career change, we've created different brands. So that's kind of in a nutshell who I am, why we have different brands, and who your hosts are tonight. So Monica, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. So we have a wonderful panel from all parts of the world and from different walks of life with lots of experience and hugely passionate about coaching and helping others. I'm the facilitator, so I'm more of the person that's kind of driving the initiatives and the programs. I've got corporate experience of 20 years. I'm hugely passionate about seeing people grow, develop, and for me, my contribution is to help everyone tap into their true potential, because I believe that everyone has it. I'll hand over to Mira, who will introduce herself. Mira, you're on mute.
Out of habit, always on mute. Sorry about that. Hello and welcome all to today's webinar on empathy. While Philippe called out a few names initially, but since we have started the webinar, the rest of the people who have joined later on, welcome to all of them. I'm Meera Singh Rawat. I'm a certified coach for personal and professional development, specializing in coaching clients throughout different phases of their job search journey, and have extensive experience in developing individuals for high performance. Having worked for over 2 decades in the corporate banking financial services, with global clients makes me culturally astute. I'm also a certified DISC assessor for personality and behavior assessments. I'm adept at understanding behaviors and helping teams to drive with their highest potential, delivering a holistic experience. Over to you, Jessie.
Thank you, Neera. Hello, everyone. I'm Jessie, and I have 13 years of corporate experience in human resources. I'm also a career and personal development coach since 2018. My passion is actually to help people overcome their challenges, reach their potential, and achieve their goals and dreams. So I will leave you now with Joshua.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joshua Sauer from the United States. I'm from New York. I've been a certified professional coach focusing on the career development of individuals for the past 8 years. I originally was in the broadcast industry, working for 2 Fortune 500 companies for 13 years. I am a certified MBTI practitioner, and I like to work with individuals on their career exploration and their career journey. I'll hand it over to Karthik.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. I'm Karthikeyan. I'm a coach, consultant, and facilitator with a passion to make a difference to people. I'm ICF certified coach. I coach people on themes ranging from personal effectiveness, leadership development, career development, and overall well-being. And through this, I empower people to get clarity on what they want, find meaning in what they do, and accomplish their goals. And I welcome you all to this webinar and glad to be part of this. Over to Monica.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. So to our wonderful guests who are on this webinar today, this is our panel, and they'll be driving and facilitating this session. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about empathy. And when we think about empathy, many different things may come to your mind. And I found this quote, and it's from Barack Obama, and it really sounded true. It really resonated with me. And here he says, the biggest deficit we have in our society and in the world right now is an empathy deficit. We are in great need of people being able to stand in somebody else's shoes and see the world through their eyes. And that's the essence of what we're going to be covering, the core themes of today's webinar, because sometimes someone may come to you with a problem or come and speak to you about a situation, and you may wonder, whoa, that's not a big deal. How can that be bothering someone so much? My problems are way worse. Yet when we practice empathy, when we look at the world from other perspectives, then we are able to understand them, understand their story, and that's the essence of what we're going to be talking about today. Now, many studies have been conducted on empathy, and when we use empathy, it makes us a better leader, friend, manager. It helps in relationships, it helps us in the workplace, and it even helps parents. So let's go on this journey and explore this topic together further. One of the first things I would like you all to do is reflect. And I've got 3 questions here, and I would like you to reflect on these questions to yourself. If you've got a piece of paper next to you or your phone, you may want to make some notes. When you think about the first question, when you think about empathy, what comes to your mind? What are some of the words, the feelings, the essence of what empathy is? So take a couple of moments to think about that. What about when you think about shoes? What do you think about? Do you think about a pair of Nike trainers, a pair of Jimmy Choos, or something else? When we think about empathy and shoes, what comes to your mind? And the final question, when was the last time you felt another person's emotions? What did you do? How did it feel? So some of these questions, you maybe haven't thought about them in this way, or they haven't ever been asked to you in such a direct way. Because when we're in situations, it's not that easy, it's not that clear. So maybe the next time you're faced with a situation, you could ask yourself, okay, how can I switch on the empathy within me? What can I do to have more empathy? When we have empathy, it allows us to understand others. It improves the way that we operate. Many studies have been conducted that have found that when we manage or lead using empathy, we can improve our management and leadership skills. It changes our behaviors. It also allows us to understand ourselves better. And overall, there are many benefits associated with this. And at the end of the day, a lot of what we're trying to do is grow who we are as individuals, do the best that we can, and tap into who we are. So this is another element that you can focus on. You can invest in yourself to have more empathy, improve your own lives and the lives of the people around you. I'm now going to hand over to Karthik, and he's going to talk about the 3 different types of empathy.
Thank you, Monica. Empathy can be shown and experienced in several ways. Psychologists Daniel Goleman and Paul Ekman, they talk about 3 types of empathy: cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. And I relate to a quote to really understand these 3 types of empathy. Alfred Adler says empathy is seeing with the eyes of another, listening with the ears of another, and feeling with the heart of another. So cognitive empathy is about understanding others' perspective, thinking about others' thoughts and others' feelings. So, for example, let's take social media. I consider social media, for example, Instagram, it's fun for me. Maybe my friend considers it as just waste of time. So there's just 2 different perspectives. So ultimately, cognitive empathy is about seeing the world through the eyes of others and listening so that we understand their perspective. And it helps us to understand why they see the world the way they see it. And next, emotional empathy. As the word describes, it's about emotions. But here, it's not only understanding the thoughts and feelings, you go one step beyond, and it's about sharing that feeling. For example, it could be sharing the pain of losing a loved one, or it could be sharing the joy of getting the first job. Now, you're able to share that feeling maybe because you experienced that in your life, or maybe a similar situation, or you're able to imagine it and get that feeling inside you. So again, to relate to that quote, it's about feeling with the heart of another, and that's emotional empathy. And now, compassionate empathy. Because you're able to understand the thoughts and feelings of others, and maybe even share that feeling to some extent, you want to do something, you want to help. So that's compassionate empathy. Maybe, for example, your partner likes to watch live music shows, and just to do that, you take care of the entire household chores. So that could be one example. Or you have a friend who just is moving in your neighborhood, and you want to help her out maybe by cooking a meal for her. Or it could be a colleague who's joining in your team new into the organization. And because you understand how it feels to be new in an organization, you invite him or her for lunch. And so that just to make her feel better, and also be a buddy for her to settle down in the organization. So this is compassionate empathy. And whatever forms of empathy it is, it's not necessary that we show all 3 forms in all situations. Some might not be practical, some might not be possible. But it's most important for us to choose which suits us and what suits the situation. As Mary Angelou, an American poet, says, people forget what you said, people forget what you did, but people will remember how you made them feel. So it's important for us to practice empathy in whatever forms, depending on the situation and as per our choice. And to explore this further, we have a few case studies, and I hand it over to Monica to take it further.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Karthik. And I love that you mentioned Maya Angelou. I'm a huge fan of hers. I love her books and I love her poems. So thanks a lot. So as we can see, there are different types of empathy, and we're going to explore a couple of case studies and see how in those case studies we would actually be able to express empathy and convey it in various situations. So the first case study is about someone working in an organization, and this may have happened to one of us, or maybe not to this extreme, but it could have. It's an example of someone actually committing human error, and as a result of the human error, the organization has faced financial losses. And that's because it's a small company. They probably couldn't handle the buffer of the situation. So this is an example that maybe you have experienced or you know someone who has. And I would like to bring our experts. I would like to bring Mira into this to give her coaching perspective of the situation and also what we could do in such circumstances.
Thank you, Monica. This is a very good subject, and I think whoever has had a career of more than 5 years, or at least, anything more than 5 years, we all have done mistakes, we all have done errors. The magnanimity of it could be different. It could be large, it could be small, and again, the definition of large and small differs based on the organization that you're working with. So, reading from the slide, an individual at a small startup firm makes a human error that costs the small business thousands of dollars, and he loses key clients in the process. So there are a couple of questions that you can see on the slide. I'll try to address the first 3 questions, and I'll bring in my colleague Josh later to give his opinion. So the first one is, what would you do as his co-worker to help him move forward to overcome this obstacle and be more successful? While you keep thinking about it, and while this provokes your mind, whether such an incident has happened in your life, let me just quickly give a few pointers on this first question. So what would you do as his co-worker? First, help him self-reflect. Understand the gap due to which this error happened. Was it oversight, carelessness, not being focused, any personal issues overbearing his professional priorities? Second, identify the exact element that caused the error to happen. Third, take corrective actions. On the second question, what do you think is going through his head? Self-doubt, impact on taking decisions in future, loss of confidence, fear of losing credibility, and inability to socially face colleagues or stakeholders. Third question, what type of support should he seek to help him get past his career roadblock? Simple, make a plan to practice perfection for the gap identified, use his network to find new opportunities, call upon his allies and champions to pitch for him, and definitely meet a coach. So having covered these quick 3 questions, now comes the meat of the case study. The last one, who has been in this situation and how have you overcome that type of adversity? Before I share my views, I would like to call my colleague Josh to share his views on this aspect. Josh, over to you.
Sure. When we're examining who has been in the situation and how have you overcome that type of adversity, a lot of us have, as Mira pointed out. I think one of the key focal points for that is the relationship that the person might have with the coworker and his own personal network, like Mira pointed out. As you can see in the picture, his coworker is comforting him. One thing that might be going through his head in this situation is, am I going to be fired? I let my company down. I'm concerned about the individuals in the company as well, and also he might be thinking about what the bigger picture is for himself. Like, how can I overcome this? So when we're talking about the support is very key. Beyond just the coworkers and the networks, there are also some professionals like us, coaches, or if it's a deeper issue, the person can reach out to get more training. So that way that the person, when in the identified area, as Mira said, identifying where the issue was, the person can seek out, should I become more certified? Should I take a class? Should I get more training? And those are some of the ways that a person can overcome some of these human errors, but we all have them. And when I've had my own battles with human errors and overcoming adversity, one of the things that's helped me get through is focusing on the fact that it wasn't a life or death problem. And so that alone helped me overcome any of the obstacles, because I still have myself intact, and no one died in the issue. So that pulled me through it, because I knew that I can have better performance, and I knew that I can learn from my mistakes, and I would be better off from having experienced that adversity. So
Josh, picking up from you, if I can summarize, who has been in his situation and how have you overcome that type of adversity? I have had experience on this with a couple of my own team members, both in the contact center and the operations space and location strategy deliverables. There have been occasions where there has not only been a commercial loss, but also loss of credibility. In some instances, the organization could make up for the monetary loss, but could not regain the lost credibility. At times, we have had to let go of the colleague. So for overcoming this type of adversity, there are simple steps. Identify the problem, take corrective action, make sure the colleague gets consultation both in terms of training and counseling, as long as it is not an integrity issue and the monetary aspect has been something that was within the risk appetite of the policy. We have reprimanded the colleague but retained him. So that's the quick one on this case study. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. Really helpful. And like I said to the audience, if you have any questions, please post them on the chat. We will happily answer them for you as we go along, if it's relevant to the case study. So we're now going to move to case study 2, another very relevant one, especially in the world that we are right now. We hear on the news about people being furloughed, a word that many people didn't even know what it meant until COVID-19. We've heard about people who have been made redundant. I personally know like at least 10 people who have been made redundant over the last 4 weeks. So this is a very real problem. And so this case study is very much focused on how do we deal with redundancies? And if you're a manager, how do you deal with the situation? So I'm gonna hand over to Jesse and to Karthik to talk more about this subject because of the area they work in and the experience they have.
Thank you, Monica. So the case study 2 is due to a crisis in the financial markets, a leading organization is going to make several people redundant. You are a manager and will be making a member of the staff who has been with the organization for 8 years redundant. So you know that they have a small family and they need the job. So here I request the audience to think of the question, what do you think the staff member who is going to be made redundant is thinking, is feeling? Just think about put yourself in that situation, and maybe I request you to share your perception of what their thoughts would be, what their feelings would be in the chat box, and we'll come back to it after a few moments.
So that's and I think that's coming back to the point here. This is a very relevant topic, and if you were a manager, how would you feel? Now, Jesse, I know that HR is the world in which you work, and this is something which you've probably done a lot or have to facilitate such discussions. So what are some of the things that you think are important as a manager, a HR function, and also as an individual to deal with this situation?
Yeah, true, Monica. You know, as an HR, I've been there many times, unfortunately. But what is important to know, it's a very hard core for the manager. But for the person that is being actually fired, it's a downright traumatic. So as a manager, first of all, We need to listen and listen actively and genuinely about what they're going through. Second, we need to validate and acknowledge their pain and their feelings. Third, we need to actually ask them what do they need to help them to be able to, and what do they need to feel better, or to be able to pass this, to ease this transition period. And definitely we have to help them to understand that it's not about them, it's about the financial crisis that is going there, that it's not about their skills, it's not about their competencies. Because even sometimes you have wrong people in the wrong position, but it's not that they are not good enough. And this is very important for them to know. And eventually, and after everything, and after explaining to them and understanding what they're going through, this is where we have to offer our help. We offer our help by we might introduce some references or make some introduction for them, or even they can seek, let's say, a career coach to help them rebuild their CVs, to help them put their profile out there to feel more attractive for recruiters. I will help them as much as I can when it comes to recruiters, when it comes to their profile, their CVs, everything. The most important thing for them to understand, it's not about them, not for their self, it's not about their confidence, it's not about their skills, it's about the full idea of what's happening in the financial market.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much for that. The last question, who has been in this situation and how have you dealt with it? So anyone who's worked for an organization for quite a while, if you've got a career in any corporate organization, there could have been a situation where you have had to do this. Before I target anyone on the panel, is there anyone in the audience who's been in a situation where they've had to make a difficult call of this nature, and you want to share your experience? Okay, then I'm going to hand over to Philippe. Philippe, can you tell us how you dealt with situations of this manner in the past?
Yes, so thanks for the question. So unfortunately for me in the past, one of the biggest scale redundancies I've had to make was 6,500 people in 3 months. So we're talking seriously, massively big number. And to build on what Jesse said is when you finish the legal wording you have to use in case of redundancy, especially in countries like Europe, it becomes about a human being, and it becomes the first thing I used to do is to explain it's not them personally, it's not a performance dismissal. And then what really helped is how can you help them as a human being? So for example, we used to do things, can we extend the notice? Can we help them with training? Can we see if they have lateral move? During the redundancy period, if they need to take half a day to go for interview or whatever, we would be much more lenient for that. And in the best companies I've worked with, line manager and HR would create partnership with employees. So we would do coaching, we would do confidence rebuilding, because in some cases, when you made redundant after 25 years in the company and all you've known is that company, it's a massive shock to the system. So the way I've done it in the past is literally creating a partnership so the person who is on the receiving end of the redundancy doesn't feel victimized or that his or her world is about to end.
Okay. Thanks for that. We've actually got some comments and questions on the chat as well. So Naveen, really good point. When it's happening to me as an individual, I gave years of my life to this firm. I worked long hours. I went out of my way, yet I gave you loyalty. How are you supporting me? Why are you doing this to me? So what can a manager do if someone says things like that? Philip, do you want to answer?
Well, the first thing the manager will say, it might be the last thing the employee want to hear, and not believing that there is still loyalty. But I think people need to understand that for a manager, making redundancy is literally the last thing they have left to potentially say as a company. So every single potential solution has been used and has been exhausted. So it really is the last resort. And as I said earlier, it's not the payback on loyalty, for a better word, is, in my opinion, done by how much the company and or manager can then support the employee to go through that period. because normally at this stage, there's no way you can undo the redundancy. It means that the company is in a difficult situation or is a merger and they have no choice. Naturally, a company wants to keep the people. So it's what can they kind of give back to help restore the loyalty and also the faith in human being, really.
Mm. And Sajesh, that actually answers your point as well, like looking at lateral movements and things like that. So looking at the options, exhausting the options before we get to that point. Yeah, that's something that is really relevant. Kiran, you've raised a point as well, and this is about scenarios when we look at things from an emotional perspective, like how do we balance that with rationality? Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that? I'm happy for you to unmute and ask the question to everyone verbally.
So in these situations, when the individual is impacted, and I have been impacted in my career at some point, and where I was the driver, I came into the organization and they didn't know, then I tried, how to brought my skills from the academia and did all. Then I mean, for some people, at least I can see from my own individual perspective, I understand it was not anything against me or anything. It was the company going through a crisis, but for few days, emotions were taking over the rational kind of approach. That it was more like and emotionally, when you are kind of, it became I versus the organizations. I did this to them and they did this to me, right? So it's a kind of like you're hijacked by that emotional reaction rather than the rational kind of approach.
Maybe let me answer that, and then I'll flip it to Mira and the others. I think one of the things to remember at that time, and it's obviously difficult because, to your really good point, it is emotional, is to remember that that specific moment in time of redundancy doesn't define who you are, but you can then define your response to that event. And I know it's hard because I've been on both ends, and when you receive that letter, the world stops. But remember that this is not you as a person. So Mira, what do you think?
The closest incident which comes to my mind, Kiran, is whether it's professional life or personal life, you're right. The variable is always more emotional than rational. So my spouse was detected with 9 blockages in his heart, despite being a super fit guy running for 5 kilometers every day, no smoking, no drinking, super healthy habits, right? The whole world came crashing down because 9 blockages in the heart, with which 6 of them were at 90%. And it was like, why me? Why him? Yeah. So whether it comes to professional life or personal life, every individual first leans inward. And then with little time that passes by, you come to realize the rationality of it. And I think we need to lean on the counselors, on the HR specialists, on the coaches and mentors to help us out through that phase. When we join an organization, we very well know through our appointment letters why I'm able to speak like this, because I've been at sea level. I have had to do this n number of times. So I'm speaking out of experience. It's not a very easy task to do, but eventually try and help the people to find alternative options outside the organization as well. That's what empathy is. So what we tried to do, while there was a strategic decision that we had to let go of people, we parallelly tried to place as many people as possible through our network at whatever places we could. But at the end, the individual has to deal with it in life just the way we do in our personal lives. That's all I had to add, Philippe. Over to you.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, just wanted to add one more thing.
Sure.
To this piece, that many times the induction may be wrong. I may have hired a person at the end of the year, or because of corporate requirements, I may ask him to leave because he was not the right induct. I may have asked him to leave the job, but subsequently, like Mira said, I have also been in position where I've asked people to leave, and down the line, maybe 1 year, 2 years down the line, they have grown much more than had they been in this organization, they would have grown. So sometimes it makes us feel better that this person moved out and he is reached to that levels. So I just wanted to add that perspective also in this conversation.
And that's a really good perspective, isn't it? And then they say, like, there are, and it sounds cliche and it sounds like, you know, it's all softy, mushy things, but so many successful people, so many people who have achieved success, they say that we learned the most from our failures than from our successes. So when we go through a tough time, when we have to pick ourselves up and grow ourselves, then there is something greater for us. And I think that's the other thing as well. Once we've got over the emotional feelings we have, because you might feel emotional for a week, then it's how do we pick ourselves up? And it's that. So that's a really, really useful way and point for you to raise. So thanks so much for that.
Yeah,
I'm going to
continue.
Monica, just
Sandra had asked something earlier, which maybe we could ask Josh, Jesse, and Karthik. Sandra's question is a brilliant one, I think, is how do you know the need for empathy if it's difficult and it's not expressed as words?
Yeah, I could feel that one. If you're working with if you're a coach working with a client, the need for empathy has to always be there. It has to always be constant. It's a dance. And so if you're working with if you're coaching a client, it's normally not the first time you're meeting the person. So the person will come to the meeting and you might know from body language or tone what's different from this meeting from the last meeting as a coach. And so through powerful questioning, you could find out and get to the deeper layers of that client. What is unique about this situation as opposed to the last situation? So if you're over the phone, it could be tone, but if it's in person or over a virtual meeting like we're doing right now, you might also be able to pick up some body language cues. So you coach for what's not there, and you always dance with the client, but you always have to keep have the highest positive regard for your client. So empathy is always present in a coaching conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
And that's very true. So Karthik, I'm going to move to the Q&A and then we'll cover that. But like a lot of the experts in coaching, they all say that the coaching relationship, empathy is one of the core foundations of that. So I'm going to move, we're going to have a big chunk of time to do Q&A. So I'm going to move on to wrap up this session and then I'll open up the panel to everyone. So we've gone through the topic of empathy, and one thing that we would like you to reflect on and take away is that when you look at things from the perspective of others and spend time to understand them, then you are displaying empathy. And it may not be easy. And one of the questions that someone from Australia who's posed to us, and we'll go through that, is I find it difficult to show empathy. So it's up to you now as an individual that once you understand what it is and how to use it, how are you going to take that forward? So it is an important skill to have. It benefits everyone, including ourselves as individuals. We hope that the case studies resonated with many of you, and maybe if that situation results in the future, you know how to deal with it. The thing to emphasize here is that empathy is something we grow and develop. It takes time. You can practice it in baby steps till you become better at it. And a coach can help you go through that journey as well. Now, I want to thank everyone for joining this session. I'm going to open up the floor to questions now. And before we do that, I just want to give everyone the opportunity to know that if you want to have a free discovery session with one of the coaches on from Get Set Coach, then you can go onto the Get Set Coach website. There's a free discovery session that you can book and you can connect with them. You can talk to one of them or all of them. It's up to you if you're interested in taking a coaching journey forward. So thanks so much.